Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness podcast. I'm your host, Jeneé of JeneéM.com. I'm an entrepreneur, financial professional, and I specifically focus on helping first-generation grads figure out what to do with their money so they can pay off debt, build wealth, and create a strong legacy. So this podcast is sponsored by The Blueprint, an online course helping you prepare for home ownership. You can find more about the course and enroll at bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. That's bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. So yesterday I shared that the original name for the podcast was actually Ask Jeneé, and I ended up changing the name for marketing purposes because obviously when you are getting on a platform and you're starting out, people need to get acclimated to who you are. And so I wanted the name to be something that drew people, and since people aren't acclimated to me yet, one of my business mentors suggested that I change the name. So we changed it from Ask Jeneé to Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness. Now, with Ask Jeneé, I did allow people to send in questions to me for me to answer on the podcast. And so I did have several entries that came in, and then people I reached out to personally because I felt like they would align with how I help people. And I did get their responses back. And so I'll be addressing another one of those concerns on tonight's broadcast, just as I did yesterday. So yesterday we dealt with unexpected expenses and boundaries with family members. Today, one of the frustrations that stood out, and again, the question was just when it comes to managing finances, what's your biggest frustration right now? So this was someone else's response. Their response was trying to build an emergency fund and a business. So their frustration was trying to build an emergency fund and a business. So that's what we'll be dealing with today. Now, emergency funds, just if you did not know, you should have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved. And that's if you're making under $50,000 a year. Now, if you make more than $50,000 a year, I would highly recommend that you have 6 to 12 months worth of expenses saved. And that's because your lifestyle is a lot more expensive. So 3 to 6 months won't get you very far. So you should definitely lean towards having more expenses saved. So that's the recommendation. Now, if you're somebody who is trying to build a business, and obviously, your business is another stream of income, but at the same time, just getting started with building a business, obviously you're going to have some expenses that you'll need to lay out. So my response to that is just finding a balance. There are ways where you can start a business with no money. And literally there are, depending on what type of business you want to have. Now, when it comes to the online space, there are ways that you can get started fairly cheap. And you don't have to lay out a whole bunch of money. And then as you have money coming into your business, of course, you can take that money and reinvest it. So that way your business income will actually be the money that you use to grow your business and not your personal funds. Now, when you're a solo entrepreneur, obviously you will have to invest in your business. But if it's to a point where you're trying to build a business and the investment that's needed in order to start your business is taken away from your household, then you basically need to rethink what type of business you're building. Because you may be trying to start off and moving to step 3 when you haven't started to master step 1 and step 2, which can get enough money in the door to get you to step 3. So my recommendation is just to start with what you can afford, and that's trying to get started with little to no overhead, and there are ways you can do that. And then allow the money that you earn in your business to be reinvested and use that to grow your business. Now, one thing that came to mind, if someone is trying to create a book, obviously there are expenses for that. And yes, that's absolutely true. So you do have to lay out money in advance before you can actually sell the book. But there are things outside of creating the book that you can do. Like, depending on whatever topic you're talking about, you can tie that to an actual service, and you can provide that service to people. And when you market it, you can use a tool like Acuity Scheduling and allow people to take advantage of your service. And that platform allows you to get paid before somebody can schedule a session with you. Now, if you go to my website, if you've never heard of Acuity, if you go to my website, jeneem.com, that's JENEEM.com. If you look on the Work With Me tab on my website, you'll see that I have Acuity Scheduler set up. Now, if you're curious on, what that'll look like for you, if you go to the Resources tab, I have a list of different platforms that I use that are cost effective. So that's if you're an author. You can tie a service related to what your book is about, because when you're writing a book, books have a great way of establishing you as an expert in a certain area. And so if you're writing a book, whatever topic you're writing about, the perception is that you know about that topic. Therefore, you are qualified to write about it, you're qualified to speak about it, and possibly even teach about it. So speaking is another way that you can collect income and get money coming in the door. And with speaking, you just getting started, you may or may not be compensated for speaking. But at least when you go to speak, if you're not being compensated, you can, again, point them towards working with you on a one-on-one basis, and you can consult for them. You can also, and I was sharing this idea the other day with someone I know who's in the process of writing a book. You can contact the publisher that you're working with to get a landing page set up or some type of form online where you can collect pre-orders. That way you can get some money coming in before the book is even done. I believe that should be an option whether the book is finished or not, but obviously you'll need to check with the publisher in order to do that. Now, if you're somebody who has a product-based business where maybe you make crafts or something like that, and you obviously have to buy materials in order to run your business, then based on all the products that you want to offer, then you can start with the products that don't require a lot of materials, and you can master that. You can market that and sooner or later, through word of mouth and as you put yourself out there, you'll become known for that particular product. And so as you sell that one product that the materials are, not hard to afford, you build up your income that way, and then you can reinvest the money that you receive into more pricier materials, so that way you can start offering your more premium products. So that would be my recommendation in terms of that. I did get a lot of frustrations that people had where they felt the need to choose between saving or their other responsibilities. And my response to that is, you need to put your savings on autopilot. If you have to think about whether or not you're going to save, when you get paid, or you think you can't save before you even get paid, then I'll definitely say that you're headed for trouble. A lot of times we think we can't do something unless we actually try to do something. And so I'm a firm believer that when it comes to saving, you want to put that on autopilot, and by automating it, because if it's left up to you, you'll think yourself out of it and you won't save anything at all. So what do I mean by that? If you work a 9 to 5, then you can update your direct deposit with your employer and have a certain percentage or dollar amount sent to your savings account that you should not have access to, because that's tempting. Or if you are unable to update your direct deposit, then you can have an automated payment drafted out of your checking account and have it sent to your savings account each time you get paid, because that alleviates the thought of whether you can or cannot save. If you have it set up this way, then it's not a question whether you're going to save. And you condition yourself to live off of less money. That's exactly what I did when I worked in corporate. I put my savings on autopilot and was able to save $500 a month for 3.5 years. Now, if you're someone who struggles with being disciplined with how they spend, I talked about a few days ago on a previous podcast about the importance of having a plan for how you'll use your money. If you go to my website, jeneem.com, JENEEM.com, under the training tab, I have a resource for building a budget, and it'll help you with creating a plan and crafting a plan of how to spend your money. It also provides best practices about how much you should be spending in each category within your budget. And then when it comes to housing, if you want to purchase a house, it tells you how to begin shopping for one. And so one of the things I highly recommend, you want to make sure that you develop the discipline to manage your finances before you get into a home, because when you get into a home, your expenses naturally will increase. And so if you're not prepared for that and you're not disciplined with managing money, then you can potentially put yourself in a financial bind because you don't know what you're doing with your money. And that, that would be very unfortunate. And I believe that's how, a lot of people end up in foreclosure. I shared my personal story and how my dad, despite being an entrepreneur, making great money, 12 years into our brand new home, like it was new construction, so we were the first family to live in it. Despite being in the home for 12 years and him having such a profitable business, because he was not disciplined with his money, and managing it, he thought he had more than he actually did. And so by him not making the payments on the mortgage, we ended up being forced to sell in order to avoid foreclosure. So it's very important that you have a plan for how you want to spend your money, because a budget is there to help you with reaching your financial goals, whatever those are. And so it's important that you use that as a tool to help you reach your goals. Otherwise, if you assume that what you're doing is correct, or you just neglect to figure out, if what you're doing is even the right way to do things, quite frankly, then you run the risk of allowing time to go by and staying stuck in the same place and making absolutely no progress at all. And that's why you have financial professionals. That's why you have people around to educate others on how to manage their finances, simply because, we're faced with a lot of different decisions day in and day out. We deal with a lot of pressures, just in life in general. And a lot of those things trigger emotions that will sometimes make us, not unwillingly either, but sometimes it'll trigger emotions that'll cause us to act out in ways that are not beneficial but harmful. And making decisions, financial decisions, bad ones, can be a end result of that. And a perfect example is retail therapy. That's a thing when someone feels, when they don't feel great about themselves. One of the ways that people find a release is through shopping. And it may be money that they have or don't have to spend, but they'll still do it because they're looking to satisfy a certain urge that they have. Impulse spending is another thing, and that's along the same lines. You get an urge to buy something and you immediately go out and get it. Now, I'm not saying that I am not guilty of this. I very much am. I don't deal with it as much anymore, but before I really cracked down on myself, this was about, 2012. So it was about 6 years ago. I was literally buying stuff left and right. Like every other week I was in the mall. And one day I looked in my closet and I was like, how is it that I'm always spending money on clothes, but I never have anything to wear? Or I always felt like my closet was empty. And that's when I realized I'm buying a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not really, filling up my wardrobe the way that I wanted to. And that's when I realized, I would just aimlessly buy stuff, but I wasn't being intentional about it. So after that, I started shopping off season, and I would spend a few $100s at one time, and those clothes would last me a really long while, and it would add to my wardrobe the way that I wanted to. And because it was off season, I ended up getting a lot of great deals and not paying retail. So now I go that route. And because I have not really grown since then, I'm not getting any taller, and I'm not getting any wider either. So I actually still wear the same size as 2012, and a lot of the clothes that I bought then, I still wear now. So I don't shop very often, and if I do, I'm buying a bunch of clothes at one time because I'm getting a great deal on it. I know it'll add to my wardrobe because I buy a good number of pieces, and I make sure I intentionally shop for things that I know I'll need. It's important that with any purchase that you make, that you're taking care of your needs first. And then if you are, doing things to satisfy your wants, that's fine. But I definitely recommend doing it in moderation, especially if you're somebody that's on a tight budget. And I'm all for DIY, substitutes if you're unable to splurge on the real thing. For instance, I used to, when I worked in corporate, first of all, I was being overpaid at the time. But yeah. So yeah, I was being overpaid at the time. So I, fresh out of college, didn't really have any debt. And so, I just had extra money. I would get chemical peels like I think it was like once a month or once every 2 weeks. No, once a month, because every 2 weeks, that would be too often. But I would get chemical peels, and they were like $125 a pop. And I would get them once a month because, I had a certain goal of what I wanted my skin to look like. And growing up, I'm somebody who suffered with acne and acne scarring, or hyperpigmentation. That's what they call it. So I would get these chemical peels. Well, fast forward, after I left corporate and went to a nonprofit, that wasn't my budget anymore. And so I didn't have the money available to get those chemical peels done. But, thank God for something called Indian clay. And what else needed to be added to that? Either apple cider vinegar or baking soda. I believe it's apple cider vinegar. But mix those two together and you have a mask that helps accomplish the same thing. So no matter what your vice is, what your weakness is when it comes to spending money, there is a cheaper alternative. Like if makeup is your thing, because I know I've splurged multiple times and spent a ridiculous amount of money on makeup. But if you go on Pinterest, there are actually dupes for a lot of high-end products out there. And I know on YouTube they do a lot of DIY makeup tutorials, and they have hacks or hauls where they use drugstore makeup. And so there are alternatives for everything. So if you feel the urge to spend some money, there is always a cheaper option. So that's kind of the extension of, if you feel that you're someone who struggles with spending, that's how we got off on that tangent. But there are always alternatives to that. But you need to have a plan for how you are planning to spend your money and going to spend your money. Because at the end of the day, because you work so hard, you want to make sure that you have something to show for it. And I understand that there are people out there that struggle with living in the paycheck to paycheck cycle. But if they were more proactive and intentional in how they plan out how they'll spend their money, then they would find that they don't necessarily have to stay in that cycle. And so if you're somebody who needs assistance with how they manage their money, if you go to my website, jeneem.com, jeneem.com, under the training section, there are resources out there that can help you in terms of building your budget, developing a saving strategy so that way you can get more consistent with that. If you're looking to create a debt repayment strategy, there's a training out there for that. And if you are looking to buy a home and you want to improve your credit score, then there's a training as well for that. And there's also the blueprint, which helps with preparing for the home buying process. So it actually is a bundle of all 4 of the trainings I have out there in one. Plus it takes you through the entire home buying process. So the blueprint is linked down below if you're on SoundCloud. And if you are on YouTube, if you go to my website, in the middle of the home page, it says I'm ready to. If you click on buy a home, it'll take you to the site, or you can go to bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home, bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. So it literally lays out step by step how to start making preparations and how to get your finances in order. So that's all I have on that topic for today. If you do want me to answer a question, you can submit it at bit.ly/ask-Jeneé. That's Jenee. Again, that's bit.ly/ask-Jeneé. Thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to talking with you on the next podcast. Take care.